What happens when a leader has the title, the office, the nameplate, but none of the awareness? And what's actually more dangerous? Having no leader at all, or having one who's completely unconscious of the environment they're in? Today on Walking Victory, Naron Tillman sits down with conscious leadership expert Rebecca Wilson to unpack exactly that. They explore why the old fire under you leadership style is breaking down, why self awareness is now the most critical leadership skill, and how integrating your whole self, not just your professional mask, is the key to leading in today's world. This is a conversation that will shift something in you.
Now available. Awakening I Am, Internal Awareness in an AI Age audiobook, and our Victory Builders platform, which integrated system for founders who execute, is open. Links in the description. A lack of leadership can be detrimental. It doesn't mean that there isn't a person who has the title of leader, who has the nameplate on their desk, who has all of the fixings, the outward appearance of leadership. But lack of leadership can be detrimental. And the question that we're going to pose today is it better to lack a leader and find someone that can fill in a leadership void, or to have a leader who's not conscious about the environment, about the people, and how long it takes to unwind that seed that they plant, which grows out to fester into a variation of things. Some things are more difficult to recover from than others. My name is Naron Tillman. This is Walk in Victory, where we sit you at the feet of the masters and have conversations to help you evolve your life. These conversations dive deep into mindset, mindfulness, neuroscience, marketing, whatever it is that we're talking about in a day, but they all are for thought leader, for you, the listener. Today's guest is Rebecca. How are you?
Doing very well, thanks, Naran. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, when we hear the word conscious leadership, is it best to have a lack of leadership as opposed to having a leader that is unconscious about the environment that they're working in?
Yeah, this is a fascinating inquiry because what does it mean to have a lack of leadership, right? It sounds like in your
It could,
example, it's just a lack of formal title, perhaps, someone holding that clarity of I'm the boss. But it's interesting to see what emerges in that scenario, right? Because
but
often there is leadership
well,
that comes forward.
let me unpack that. So, let's give the lack of leadership a frame. Like if a pinnacle part of the organization is misplaced, and now for a season, we haven't filled that void. And the inmates are running it. Things are still flowing. They still may be flowing off of the old regime. They still may have someone that steps in, but they may not have the same leadership skills while we look to replace what it is that we lost. Juxtaposed to having someone that is a non-conscious leader. And even that non-consciousness is broad, but we can, through our conversation, put framework around what that looks like.
Yeah. Leader, let's assume in your example that there's someone who is unaware of their lack of awareness and unwilling to become aware. I think that's the
Mm.
key to when it's problematic is when there is such strong resistance to change in a leader that they're sort of stuck and standing firm in continuing their patterns without recognition of how it's impacting in often difficult, challenging ways the people around them. So in my from my perspective, I would say if there's a leader who falls into that category of unaware but also unwilling to cultivate awareness, then it's better to have an absence of that because there will always be someone who is willing to grow and is willing to cultivate that self-awareness who can grow into the leadership. And I would say in these times, if you have to choose between a technically brilliant manager and someone who is willing to grow and cultivate the human qualities of a leader, I we don't the weight, the importance of the technical skill side is diminishing day by day with advancements in technology and AI. It's really the human qualities that are the difference maker. So, I would suggest, you know, let that person go. I would rather have an opening and have a space to grow someone into that role who has a willingness to grow and evolve.
Leadership is changing. Like, grew up in the 80s, the coach would grab you by the face mask and yell at you and do all kinds of things that that you felt like was helping you. And they, when you come later on, you found out that there's other ways. So Coach Knight used to throw chairs and do all kinds of things, and you start to develop those kind of qualities and traits, or you look for those traits and qualities in leadership. But now we're in a softer tone of leadership where people are more conscious of the why, the W's, who, what, why, where, and how, right? When do you think that shift began, and why is it important, especially with the work that you do?
Yeah, that shift to a more like shifting from leadership that lights a fire under you to leadership that lights a fire within you.
Oh,
And
wow.
I really love that beautiful
I like
framing
that.
of
I love
it.
that.
So I can't take credit for it. It was something I saw another colleague share. But this idea of leadership that lights a fire within you is motivate folks from the inside out, light that fire within them. And I see it becoming really increasingly necessary right now as a result of a void of meaning that a lot of people are experiencing. Like we see that there's so much pressure just on humans in general, including on humans in the workplace that require, that are leading to things like burnout and low engagement, low morale. And I think people are less and less tolerant of and moved by that like light a fire underneath you type of leadership, the get it done, do the thing. People have more options than ever as well. So trying to lead in that way, achieve results in that way, and really inspire people to create in that way seems to be less and less effective. So I think it's a confluence of factors that have made this necessary. And also, it's like how beautiful that we are starting to move towards more humanistic styles of leadership that honor the inner life of the people who are working and don't just, assume people are like machines and can be programmed and run and sucked all the life force and efficiency out of them for the benefit of profit. I think it's time for that to shift. And we're starting to see some movement in that direction because the old way is just breaking down.
That was a great point, and I'm going back to the sports analogy, not because that's my only reference of leadership, but I can give hard references where back in the days when I first started watching sports, the managers led with iron fists. They was telling the players you have to do this, but then the players started making more money, and the players started coming from a different generation. So our generation, when we got into pro athletes, whether it's basketball, football, or whatever, if you start yelling too much, we're going to meet you with the same energy. And then everybody's looking like, whoa, something has to give. How can we meet the player, the modern day player, where they are? And one of the things that they realize that you can't light a fire under everyone the same way, because Some people are coming from a variation of backgrounds. The leadership style that we're discussing today, how does it how does it meet people where they are? What is it, how is it so beautiful that it can blossom into this chameleon? And if someone needs to be tough, loved a little bit tougher, or someone needs, but still lighting the fire within and motivating, as opposed to creating an atmosphere of fear.
Yeah. Self-awareness and range. I think the
Mm,
biggest thing for leaders today is to have that range. And you just pointed to that beautifully, right? Like the way you inspire one person can be very different than the way you motivate, inspire another. What someone needs can be completely different. You can have some team members who are completely overwhelmed by the technical requirements of the role, and others who require more of a challenge. And I think that the real opportunity in leadership right now is to extend each and every one of our ranges to be able to adapt to the needs that present themselves, not just in the individuals we're working with, but also in the broader contexts that we're working within, right? Because there's so much change coming our way. If I'm someone who is so stuck in their own leadership style, I am always the person who's going to, raise their voice and demand compliance. And I have no self awareness and capacity to be able to shift out of that, then I'm going to be so limited in what I can accomplish through my team and through the organization that I lead. So I see this as being like really the heart of conscious leadership work, is helping people, one, become aware of their default, that comfort zone that they're in, where, I'm comfortable being the boss who's really a people pleaser and everyone loves, or I'm comfortable being the person who always has the right answer and is the smartest in the room. You can't just live within the confines of that one leadership style and thrive in this rapidly changing world. So this is what creates, I think, the opportunity and the beauty, as you spoke to, is to just like, as leaders, touch into more of the edges of possibility for what we can offer, what we can embody. Like, I can be the really delightful, easy to get along with leader. I can also be the leader who draws that hard line. And I know that I can extend the range, and it's not about me, it's about being of service. It's about deploying myself in service, and I extend my range in order to be more of service to the mission, to the team, to what matters.
these are soft skills.
Mm.
Tell me about your journey, and how did you get to this place where you develop these soft skills, but then also see an opportunity to train others in how to develop their soft skills.
My background is in organizational leadership, working with teams. And throughout my career, I was always sort of a high performing leader, high performing individual contributor as well. And was, I would say, privileged to have access to all the different leadership development programs that I could want to access in those roles. And I still found that although I was performing well, although I was producing outcomes, I was really, I would say, internally very rigid and very stretched. And I was pushing up against, the boundaries of my own leadership capacity. I didn't have the range to go to certain places in my own experience. I was really caught in a, I would say, identity and a persona of being a people pleaser, and of also being very achievement oriented, wanting to be the best, wanting to get everything done. And when you put those together, it creates this immense internal pressure. And I started really feeling the symptoms of that, as well as the disconnection from myself that came from operating in that way in a professional setting nonstop. And I didn't even realize this was a professional problem. I started going down all these paths in my personal life to start practicing yoga and doing coaching around my life purpose and things like that. And eventually found that those really started to influence the way I was showing up in leadership. And I started having more lightness in how I was showing up. My colleagues started commenting that I seemed different, that my energy was more radiant and that I was lighting up a room, someone said at one point. And it was like, oh, well, this isn't because I did some traditional, here's your 4-step how to lead effectively or how to influence program. It was because I was practicing yoga, exploring the deeper questions of life purpose, starting to learn how to really, as I said, extend my range of who I was as a person. And then that was just having all of these side effects when it came to my work. And it was sort of this unlock for me that went, oh, wow, there's something here. The inner development of leaders that is really missing in a lot of the traditional approaches to leadership development.
Take me back to the first time you sat down with yourself and you're having this mindful inner talk, and you're saying, I want to develop a curriculum for leaders such as myself. What was some of the feelings, if you can tap back into that imagination? What was some of the feelings that happened, and how did you begin to unravel the work?
Yes. I'll tell you one of the moments that really stands out to me. And it wasn't quite at the beginning, it was a little ways into my coaching work that I started discovering this. But what I'll say is that in my professional life, I was on one path, I was focused on working with leaders. And then in my personal life, I trained as a yoga teacher. And I was sharing that very organically. So there was a point where I began doing some coaching work. I trained as a coach and I was coaching leaders. And I had one particular leader who came to me in an engagement and he said, okay, my goal is I want to get promoted. And I was like, all right, let's work on that goal. And we came up with our coaching agreement to work on his goal of building the skills to get to the next level. And it became very clear early on in our work together that one of his biggest barriers was he had trouble focusing on the things that were strategic and that needed to happen, right? So I put on my yoga teacher hat working with him. And I said, I think this can actually really be of service if I teach you some mindfulness skills. And we started in our sessions and for him as like homework to integrate mindfulness practices in. And we worked together for several months. And through those months of working together, he would share with me these moments from his life where he experienced this profound sense of peace that he had never accessed before, and where he just connected in a new way, in a deeper way with his children at bedtime. And he had all these beautiful stories that were so touching. And when we got to the end of our coaching engagement, here's the interesting part. He has since landed in the role that he was aspiring to, but in our time working together, he actually let go of that desire to even be promoted because what he was starting to touch into mattered so much that he looked back at his initial goals and he said, I don't even recognize the version of myself that wrote those goals. This has been such a transformative, perspective giving experience. And that for me, that experience with that one leader was the big unlock that I can't leave mindfulness out of this work. It's so influential in allowing people to see clearly, to set goals from an aligned place, not from a place of shoulds or conditioning, but really from that place of presence and remembering, like, this is what truly matters to me. And it led me to start weaving mindfulness in at the outset of all my coaching engagements and to really making that central to my work and focusing on this niche area of the inner work of leadership development because it shapes everything that's going on in the outer world.
I have a program that I developed called the Mindful Marketer. I was mindfulness and marketing because when you're talking about your customer avatar, all you're doing is sitting down and being mindful of who they are. But when you bring meditation to that, you can really, really tap into your customer. You can really, really tap into their pain points. I just recently wrote a book called Awakening I Am. I started to see the parallels between the way that we prompt our subconscious when I'm teaching a mindfulness course or teaching a yoga course, and the way that we prompt AI, junk in, junk out.
Yeah.
And the better we become at prompting our thoughts. So this book serves as a duality using context of today, which is AI, and hopefully getting people who are afraid of technology to embrace it and people who are afraid of embracing their thoughts to embrace it. Which how many leaders can, like you, have dualities, right? They can lead really, really well, the organization, the vision, really well, but then they're afraid of who they are. They have their yoga hat over here and their leadership hat over there, their family hat over there, instead of being present and bringing all of those things together as a sweet, harmonious sound.
But from what I've been exposed to working with leaders, I would say this is such a common challenge that a lot of people can't even articulate as a challenge because of why it's vulnerable to put your full self out there, to show up
Yeah,
fully in who you are,
yeah,
right? This is something that creates a lot of exhaustion and disconnection in leaders, especially executive leaders who have really let go of the parts of themselves when they're at work that are silly or that are light. And there's so much value in being able to find that integration between the various parts of ourselves. And again, just coming back to this notion of range. You can be silly and lighthearted and fun and still be a very capable professional, and one does not come at the expense of the other. You can be all the things and bring all these things, and you can also at times put on a suit and step into that role and not have to lose yourself in it. And I think the key is you have to know who you are at a really deep level, and a lot of people are a little
don't
scared
know.
to go there, as you pointed
Who
to.
am I? Yeah,
Go on
yeah.
our phones, distract ourselves in 4,000 different ways. We can ask AI to tell us who we are, right? Like we can do all these things to avoid just sitting with the discomfort of being in these deep, challenging questions.
You've already been successful at what you're doing, and I thank you for sharing your expertise of mindfulness and leadership and all of the things that you blend together. But why are you podcasting now? What is your mission? What is your overall arching mission now?
Yeah. So, from the start of getting into this conscious leadership work, my mission is to be part of something bigger than me in terms of making conscious leadership not some niche area, but just the norm, the way things are done in this world. That would be my mission accomplished if we get to a point where we don't have to talk about conscious leadership anymore because it's just the default.
Yeah.
It's the default, right? From a personal perspective, podcasting.
There you have it, everybody. I told you we set you at the feet of the masters. And we just had a really, really deep and wonderful conversation with Miss Rebecca. Listen, we don't ask you for Cash App, Venmos, Apple Pays, and then we don't knock people that do. But what we do ask is that you support our guests. And how do you support our guests? Most of our guests come giving gifts. They just want to build their community and their orbit, their put 1% a day will help us move a little bit closer to our victory walk, and whatever that means for you. And secondly, we ask that you hit like, share, and subscribe. Your likes, your shares, your subscriptions.